today we'd have a couple of Greek myths for a change. And as you probably realise, Greek myths aren't always for the faint-hearted, so you have been warned. So let's go back to ancient Greece, where we find the king of the gods, and you all know the king of the gods is Zeus. And we find Zeus with his wife, the queen of the gods, and you all know that the queen of the gods is... No, it's not Hera. Hera was his second wife. I'm talking about his first wife, Metis, queen of the gods. For Zeus's first wife was Metis, and one day Metis said to her husband, "Oh Zeus, king of the gods, I have some news for you. We are expecting the pitter-patter of tiny little gods' feet. I am going to have a child." And Zeus was delighted. Sometimes people called him the father of the gods, but this time he was going to be a real father. His wife was going to have a baby. He went around telling everyone. He told the gods, he told the titans, he told Prometheus. He said to Prometheus, "My wife, Metis, queen of the gods, is going to have a baby, and I am going to be a father." And Prometheus said, "Good." There was something in the tone of Prometheus's voice that was disturbing Zeus, and he said, "Prometheus, tell me what is wrong. Tell me what is on your heart." And Prometheus said, "There's nothing wrong. It's just that if Metis gives birth to the baby will grow up and be more hers." Zeus's temper was always quick, and he was beginning to lose it now with Prometheus. "Tell me what is on your heart when I tell you that Metis is with child." And Prometheus said, "If Metis gives birth to the child, when the child grows up, it will be more powerful than you." And that sealed Metis's fate. Zeus went back to his wife and said, "My darling Metis, you are looking so beautiful and so radiant. Being with child suits you. But does it sap your energy? Does it take your power? Are you still truly queen of the gods?" And Metis said, "Of course I am still queen of the gods. Of course I am still as powerful as I have always been." And her husband said, "Well, just show me, prove it to me. Transform yourself into a creature. Transform yourself into something so terrible it would terrify any man on earth." And so Metis transformed herself into a Nile crocodile, lashing its tail, crashing its teeth, and hissing. And then she transformed herself back into the queen of the gods. And Zeus said, "Oh, that was amazing. A Nile crocodile. But you know the one I really love? The one that you do? The sea eagle. Can you still turn yourself into the sea eagle?" And so Metis stretched her arms out, and her arms became wings, and the wings lifted her up, and there was a graceful, beautiful, great, terrible sea eagle flying over Zeus's head, and then she landed and transformed herself back into the queen of the gods. And Zeus said, "Oh, that was beautiful. Such a graceful creature. You've turned yourself into two great creatures, but can you turn yourself into something small? I mean, could you turn yourself into something like a fly?" Now Metis was beginning to tire of this game. So she looked at her husband and said, "Of course I can turn myself into a fly," and there she was, a fly, buzzing round Zeus's head. And Zeus watched her buzzing around his head. And as Metis buzzed around his head, Zeus reached out and swallowed Metis, which was the end of her. So now Zeus did not have to fear the prophecy that Metis would give birth to a child who would become more powerful than him. He was much happier. He went back to Prometheus and was talking with Prometheus and... sorry, I had a migraine last night, and it sometimes affects remembering stuff. He went to see Prometheus, and he was talking. The pain is actually quite bad. He was talking to Prometheus, and he said, "Oh, the pain! Prometheus, the pain! Stop the pain in my head, please, Prometheus! Make it stop!" And Prometheus looked at Zeus, who was now writhing on the floor in pain. And Prometheus knew how to cure the pain in Zeus's head. And Prometheus took his axe and cut Zeus's head in half. And as Zeus's head was cut in half, it split open. And from the open skull stepped a full-grown woman, his daughter, Athene, goddess of wisdom, goddess of weaving, and goddess of war. And because she was goddess of war, she was wearing a bronze helmet upon her head, a helmet that had been beaten out by her mother Metis inside Zeus's body, giving him that terrible head pain. And as she stepped out of her father's body, of course, Zeus is a god, his head just knitted back together. And because she was never born, but stepped fully formed from his body, she was never more powerful than her father. But she had certain traits of her father. She had a short temper. She was willful. Well, she was the goddess of war, what would you expect? But she was also goddess of wisdom, goddess of weaving. And weaving was important in ancient Greece. Every woman in Greece was expected to be able to spin wool. But as a bonus, if she could then weave, then she was obviously a very good catch as a wife. And there was a woman, Arachne. And Arachne was the best weaver. The best weaver in her village. She was the best weaver in her city-state. She was the best weaver in the whole of Greece. And the problem was that she knew she was the best weaver. So she would walk around her village saying, "I am the best. No one is better than me." She'd walk around the city saying, "I am the best weaver in the whole of this city." She'd walk between the cities saying, "I am the best weaver." She'd walk along the shore. "I am the best weaver in the whole of Greece. I'm so good. I'm even better than the goddess Athene herself." Whoops. Goddess of war was not pleased. The goddess of war learned that Arachne had boasted that she was a better weaver than Athene herself. And Athene was furious. And the only way to sort this out, of course, would be to have a competition between the two of them. And so 2 looms were set up, and the 2 women sat back to back, and they wove. And they wove, watched by the gods of ancient Greece. And Athene wove 4 panels, and in her 4 panels she showed how the gods would treat mortals who behaved with hubris and thought above themselves. And Arachne wove 4 panels, and in her 4 panels she showed the gods manipulating humans and treating them like toys. But as the gods looked at Arachne's weaving, it was as if they, the gods, and the humans in the weaving too, were breathing within the fabric. It was as if they were alive. Oh yes, there is no doubt. Arachne was the best weaver. Arachne looked in triumph at Athene. And Athene turned her eyes upon Arachne, and Arachne looked into the eyes, and she saw in Athene's eyes one word: death. And so Arachne forgot her weaving and her loom, and she ran from Athene. Now, of course, running from a god is pretty hopeless in the end. And Arachne realized that she couldn't run forever. And she came to a barn, and she opened the door of the barn and saw there was no one inside, and she closed the door and leant against it. And then she saw a way she could escape Athene. For as she looked in the barn, she looked up at the rafters, and hanging from one of the rafters was a rope. And so Arachne took the rope and tied a loop into the rope and put the loop over her head, and she escaped Athene. Not long afterwards, the doors of the barn were thrown from their hinges, and standing in the doorway in all her glory was the goddess of war and wisdom and weaving. There was Athene, and Athene stood staring into the barn at the hanging, lifeless body of Arachne, and for once Athene was moved to pity. And so she let Arachne live. She not only let Arachne live, she let Arachne weave. She let Arachne weave not just for then, for that time, but for eternity. For as the breath of life came back into Arachne's body, her body shrank. She grew legs, and the rope from which she had hanged herself became her web, and Arachne became spider. So now, if early in the morning you see a spider's web hung with dew, look carefully in it, for you may see the images of men and gods. And that was the story of Zeus, Metis, Athene and Arachne, and that is how we have told it to you.